Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is January 31st, 2025, and let's get to the news and updates happening in Ukraine and Russia, shall we? We'll first talk about North Korean troops in Kursk. We'll then cover the Sarmat missile program and how it is failing for the Russians. We'll cover Sweden and its latest military aid package for Ukraine, and then we'll end the video with a small little video I want to share with you guys of the true state of the Russian military as of today. So let's first talk about North Korean troops. And although I did report on this in my previous video, it appears that the withdrawal of North Korean troops has been observed on the entire front line in Kursk. In my previous video, I talked about that it was a partial, on a partial area of the front line in Kursk, the Ukrainians could notice a withdrawal of the North Koreans and no more North Korean presence, but now it's been confirmed that throughout the entire front line in Kursk, there are no more North Koreans attacking Ukraine positions for the last 2 to 3 weeks. As you can see here, the presence of North Korean troops has not been observed for about 3 weeks, and they were probably forced to entirely withdraw after suffering heavy losses. Again, we need to remember that about a regiment size of North Korean troops have been transferred from North Korea to Russia since fall, and the Ukrainian officials mentioned that about 4,000 of them have been either killed or injured since December, when they officially started attacking the Ukrainians in Kursk. So this is good news because this showcases how effective the Ukrainians have been in defeating this first massive wave of North Koreans. However, we need to be realistic and not underestimate the North Koreans. The Ukrainian soldiers do mention that they are motivated, they're well trained, they're physically far more capable than their Russian counterparts as well. And even though they haven't been well adapted to the modern warfare realities, I think that this also will be a time for them to re-strategize how they're going to go about with this new problem of having drones pretty much saturating the entire front line, whether it be in Kursk or in Ukraine, which is the new reality of warfare, something that these North Koreans have never experienced in the past. So I am expecting them to regroup and come back soon with more troops as well, as some intelligence agencies are claiming that it's possible that North Korea could transfer a few more thousand to Russia over the next few months as well. So the war or the battle here is not over yet, but Ukraine has won this first battle against the North Koreans, and that is good news. All thanks to mainly the Ukrainian drone program and the various FPV drones that have been very effective at destroying these North Korean troops in Kursk. So more reason to provide and donate more to the Ukrainian drone program if you want. Now, let's talk about the Sarmat missile, the RS-28 missile, which was often touted by Putin as unmatched in power. However, we know that it has struggled in tests. I did report on this back in September when their latest test on this nuclear missile failed and actually exploded. As you can see in this picture, it left a massive crater. And this marked, at that point of time, the missile's fourth failed test. So why that is? And essentially it's because Russia's been relying on Ukrainian technology for these new missiles that it was developing, including the latest one, the Oreshnik, because the missile's liquid fuel engine, which is a key component, was developed in Ukraine, in Dnipro, in the design bureaus of Dnipro, called Pivdenne. This is where the Ukrainians also developed and started producing the Neptunes, the Hrim-2 ballistic missiles, and many other smaller missiles as well, which Ukraine is very successful in developing and now using against Russia. And because of that, the Russians are facing significant problems with the development of their missiles, their modern missiles. And this brings me to the next point I want to make is this is one of the many reasons, of course, there's many reasons why Putin invaded Ukraine, but this is one of the reasons why he also wanted to take over Ukraine, because of Ukraine's brain power and its military industry expertise that Ukraine has. We need to remember that without Ukraine, the Soviet Union would never have been as successful, with many of the scientists, designers, and engineers coming from Ukraine, helping the Soviet Union produce the great space programs, the tanks. Some of the most known tanks, the most successful tanks were designed and created in Ukrainian factories in Kharkiv. And the missile program was developed and innovated in Dnipro. So this is one of the reasons why Putin absolutely want to take over Ukraine because Ukraine really has that brain power. We're seeing it even right now. The limited resources that Ukraine has, look at what Ukraine's been able to produce. Right now, as we're speaking, Ukraine is now capable of striking Russia on a daily basis with its own home-produced missiles, drones, and many other vehicles that Ukraine is also producing themselves. Other types of anti-tank missiles, the Stukhna, its own weapons that Ukraine is also producing, its own military armored vehicles as well. So Ukraine is really going to be, in my opinion, a leader in the future in military technology, without a doubt. While Russia is only degrading in this specific field. Now, let's talk about Sweden. And a huge thank you to Sweden, first and foremost, and as well as Scandinavian countries, because they never stopped their support for Ukraine. And they haven't allowed politics get in the way for that. So Sweden unveiled one of the largest military aid packages for Ukraine, worth $1.2 billion. This is massive. Again, this package includes 16 CB-90 combat boats with weapon stations. That's going to be really important for the battles that are currently ongoing around Kherson City. 1 million rounds of 12.7 millimeter ammunition, 146 trucks, always important for Ukrainian logistics, 1,500 Tau anti-tank missiles, as well as 284 anti-tank launchers. And furthermore, Ukraine will also receive $90 million that will be allocated for the production of long-range missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles. Again, further strengthening Ukrainian long-range strike capabilities against Russia. So huge thank you to Sweden. The Ukrainian people are extremely grateful for that. And we've just always been historic allies. We remember the Battle of Poltava. It didn't work out back then, but I think Sweden understands what's at stake here. That it's not just about Ukraine keeping its sovereignty, but it's also about Europe keeping its sovereignty as well from Russia. And last but not least, let's talk about the state of the Russian military in 2025. So I've shared with you guys some stories and images of Russian units being recycled. So these are crippled and disabled and injured Russian soldiers that rather than being taken care of are now being recycled and sent back to the front line without any expectation of them coming back. And so this is a video, as you can see, that was shared just today of another Russian unit complaining that they have not been treated for their injuries. Some of them are walking on, with sticks. Some of them are deaf. You can see that they're definitely not well. And it's just, again, another indication of how degraded the Russian military is in several areas. Again, this is not true for the entire front line, but we're seeing more and more of these images, these videos, the Russians complaining that they're reusing these injured soldiers. And again, it's an indication that Russia doesn't want them to come back, right? That there is no plan for them to come back and be treated and be paid the veteran benefits. It's all about, how we can extract the most out of them. Because let's face it, they have become a burden for the system, and Putin would rather see them die than see them being treated fairly. And these are just traditional Russian values, to be fair. And again, as we're seeing in pure Russian fashion, rather than doing something about it, they just make videos complaining. There is nothing to feel bad about here. And this is really showcasing to you guys how terrible this situation is for the Russians right now. That they're recycling these cripples, these injured Russians, and just sending them back to the front line. I mean, how effective can they be? Truly. They're just there to be the cannon fodder and, take the main beating before the other more experienced and more capable Russian troops storm afterwards. So this is the reality of the war right now. It's not looking good for the Russians. It's difficult for the Ukrainians as well, but we're seeing that things are becoming very dire for the Russian military, and that is good news for all of us. So with all that, guys, thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you for supporting the Ukraine cause, and I will see you guys in the next few days. Slava Ukraini!